Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina McGowan, and I am the Dean of the Domena Nicilius Library. Thank you so much for joining us today for this afternoon's event, The Dream of God, Words of Hope in the Chaos, a special reading of poetry and personal writings by Father Tom Fitzpatrick. This is a hybrid event, so I welcome the individuals who are joining us online in addition to you all. A little bit about how all this came together. I became dean in early 2020, and after my appointment, it wasn't long before Father Tom reached out. He and I have had some really wonderful meetings and conversations. And starting in late 2021, he spoke about his poetry and wanting to share it with a wider audience. And here we are now. I do want to thank my colleague, Lisa Thornell, Head of Library Outreach and Communication, who helped bring this event together. I also want to thank all of our event sponsors, the Office of the President, the Office of the Provost, the Office of the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, the Fairfield Jesuit Community, the Murphy Center for Ignatian Spirituality, the Office of Alumni Relations, and the Domena Nicilius Library. And quite a list of sponsors, and that's all because of Father Tom. Just a few logistics. Following Father Tom's reading, Dr. Elizabeth Petrino, Professor of English and Director of the Magis Corps, and Carol Ann Davis, Professor of English and Director of the MFA in Creative Writing, will lead the Q&A, and Lisa Thornell will monitor the online Q&A. Immediately after the question and answer period, we will head to the wine and cheese reception. We will have a student directing us to the location, and it is just to the left as you exit the auditorium. So now I have the pleasure of introducing Karen Osborne, who is Father Tom's writing advisor. Karen Osborne is the author of 5 novels, Patchwork, winner of the New York Times Notable Book of the Year Award, Between Earth and Sky, The River Road, Centerville, which won the 2013 Independent Publishers Gold Award, and most recently, the music book. She has published poetry and short stories nationally in journals such as the Clapboard House, the Southern Review, Poet Lore, Kansas Quarterly, the Centennial Review, and the Wisconsin Review. And her books have been reviewed by the New York Times, USA Today, the Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and many other places. Karen teaches poetry and fiction writing for Fairfield University's MFA program, and Karen will be providing the introduction to Father Tom.
Thank you. It's my great honor to introduce Father Thomas Fitzpatrick's reading. His writing may already be familiar to some of you. He is the playwright of The Gentle Whisper of Trees, performed a few years ago at the Westport County Playhouse. He's also, as you know, a Jesuit priest. Before coming to Fairfield, he worked, studied, and prayed around the world, including his 20 years spent in the Middle East, amidst the very difficult violence and conflict of that region. Like many of you in the audience, I met Father Tom a few years ago when I had the good fortune of being led by him through the transformative experience of the Ignatian exercises. Then a couple of years ago, a few of us began meeting to share creative work. Father Tom had started reading the many journals he'd kept over his lifetime and expressed the desire to do something with them. Soon after, I began meeting with him a couple of times a week to listen to some of these journal entries. What followed was remarkable. Increasingly, his reading of the journals led to an outpouring of new creative work. It will come as no surprise to those of you who know Father Tom that this work is complex, multi-layered, and deeply authentic, revealing a lifelong spiritual journey with God. The inner life, which is often his focus, is the hardest to express in words, and the eternal, for many of us, can feel impossible to grasp, and harder still to find language for. But through his gentle humor his imagery of nature, including sunrises, trees, water, and wind, and his insistence on writing plainly and clearly, using simple, direct language. Father Tom touches it again and again, making it palpable in his writing. This is his great gift, I feel, to us. I'm excited this evening for you to hear this larger selection of Father Tom's work. Listening to it will give you a window into the remarkable lifelong journey of the man and Jesuit priest, alongside an extraordinary inner journey with God. I struggled recently to categorize Father Tom's writings as memoir or spiritual autobiography, as poems and short pieces or vignettes. They evaded description and categorizing. Then I thought, they are love poems to God, pure and simple. But they're also love poems to us, to the world, written with a generous heart to share the great joy of a rich life in which God is always present. Please join me in welcoming Father Tom.
Thank you very, very much, Karen, for this very generous introduction. I want to just quickly thank you all for being here, so many friends and so many people I know really very deeply. I'm delighted for this occasion, for this communication. Let's get right to the matter. If you are tempted to applaud after each piece, I'd ask you to just hold off. I'd prefer to just have a little pause and go on to the next piece. Sunrise footfalls. It is very clear in Amman, Jordan, this area of the great Syrian desert. It is very early. The sun is about to rise. I am walking from the Jesuit community to the Jesuit center, 2 miles distant. I am walking into the sunrise on very quiet, empty city streets. My steps are even, in sync with the rate of my heart. Prior to the appearance of the sun, a strong streak of seafoam green stretches across the breadth of the sky. My footfalls move steadily forward with very faint clicks breaking the silence. I pray in thanksgiving for the luminous green, the promise of day, the beauty, the presence of God. My rhythm and the rhythm of the sun coalesce, and the sun breaks through what seemed the solid line of the horizon. I'm in the sunrise. With every beat of my heart, with every step I take, I am helping to raise the sun, both push it and draw it above the horizon. God brings me in. Molly. I exit Stuyvesant Park this early morning and see her from a distance. At the corner of 2nd Avenue and 17th Street, She sits on the concrete, dressed in black, with her belongings beside her in a large black bag. On the sidewalk is a paper plate saying in bold print that she is hungry. In New York City, I am always ready. I have some loose dollars in my pocket. I take out a few and approach her. She looks up and smiles. She's about 30 years old. We are somewhat alone this early in the morning, no one in hearing distance. I smile at her and say, "Good morning. Isn't it a nice day?" She shows some curiosity and gives back a big smile, saying nothing. With a few dollars in hand, I say, "My name is Tom. Could I ask you what is your first name?" She is more curious, but answers, "My name is Molly." I pass her the dollars and say, "May I ask you to pray for me? I will pray for you." She is really smiling by this time. After a little pause, bringing her hands together like a child in church, she says, "Do you want me to pray for you right now?" I laugh. This is a pleasant first for me. I say, "No, not right now, but you could pray for me as you see me walk down the way." Looking at her and feeling that in this brief moment, the social distance of privilege and poverty has broken down, I say, "I will remember you." I turned and left. Tip of the fingers. Immersed for 20 years in the grief and pain of the Middle East, the torture, the killing, the rape, the loss of meaning and hope, I asked God, "Where are you?" In the strain, I even one day at the sign of peace in the Mass said, "I cannot pray for peace today." We pray, pray, and pray, and nothing, just the empty, bleak nothing. But then it happened. God, in a demanding, capturing moment, shook me, saying, "I am there right at the sharpest point of the conflict." As God said that, God's hands came together, the tips of the fingers touching. I am there, right at the sharpest point of the conflict. Too many to love. The young girl in a crowded mall, holding her mother's hand, says, "So many people don't know me." A deep longing to be known, to be loved. Not known, not loved. Are we human? How many people have to know us? How many people have to love us? Is it enough to be known and loved by God. The mirror. Lying on the sofa in our small living room, my legs are just long enough to touch the bottom edge of the mirror on the wall above the sofa. I am 6 years old. I set the mirror moving slightly. From my angle, I see only the white ceiling reflected in the mirror, an empty whiteness which does not change in the mirror's minor motion. The empty whiteness stimulates me to play a game. Can I do away with everything so there is only the emptiness? I imagine away trees, houses, moon, sun, the whole sky. They all go. Then I imagine away people, including my family. They all disappear. The obstacle I meet is that I cannot do away with myself and Jesus. After everything is gone, there is only Jesus and me. Jesus is my age, and we tumble around, bumping into one another in empty space, laughing. The background is not empty whiteness, as in the mirror, but empty darkness, like the night sky when the moon and stars are gone. Jesus and I are alone playing. With my foot still touching the mirror, I become afraid and go seek my mother, whom I had done away with. Bread broken. Bread broken, body broken, I give thanks. You, body broken, heart broken, share the bread. I broken, you broken, together nourished into the forever and forevermore. Bodied together, take the bread, break the bread, eat the bread. We give thanks. Flower calls out to flower. Very close to the end of winter, the crocuses are amongst the earliest flowers to bloom. It is all very sudden. They appear together overnight. Similarly, the daffodils, the forsythia bushes follow. It is like the flowers are whispering to one another, "It is time. It is time." One flower gently, inaudibly calls out to another flower. Then each kind of tree blossoms leaves together. It is time. It is time. What happens in this sphere of spring mirrors what happens in the whole universe on an extremely larger scale of space and time. The galaxies are forming all at the same time over a 14 billion year period. And each galaxy is like a flower blossom whispering across the voids of space and the eons. It is time. Everything, yes, everything in the universe stands in a mutual, invitational stance to everything else. It is time. It is time. This one is called God's Dream. This is the title that we chose for this whole event. I would just indicate that in this piece, God himself is speaking. I am speaking for God. God's Dream. In, over, under, through, out of the very forever, forevermore, and far, far beyond, I have a dream. Several butterflies flutter past us. They don't fly on smooth, straight lines. That's the dream. By the sea, large, very powerful waves begin to break, curving over with a smooth face, backlit by the sun, a light, translucent green. That's the dream. On an early winter afternoon, by a copse of trees, snow is falling. It is not a storm. There is no wind. With a very gentle ping, the flakes touch the ground. That's the dream. We stand on a hill amidst picnic tables spread with sandwiches, holding cold drinks. We chatter as we look off towards other distant hills silhouetted against a clear blue sky. That's the dream. Traffic stops. Two elderly folk slowly cross the street, holding on to one another. That's the dream. From the kitchen window, we gaze out at small children gleefully pumping high on the swings. That's the dream. I have a dream for you, but I can wait. Seeing you, seeing me. Seeing you, I see myself. Seeing Venus in the sky, I see myself. Seeing this single daffodil, I see myself. Seeing the children on the lawn playing, I see myself. God makes God's image. You are the image of God. The daffodil is the image of God. I am the image of God. Venus is the image of God. And oh, are the children. Deep in me is God, deep in you. I see God in you. You see God in me. I see you. I see me. Bad Hair Day. Just a little note on this one. I read this early on for Christina and Lisa, and I think this was the decision to have this event. So this is called Bad Hair Day. Hauled into the emergency room because of fainting at a baptism, I am alone, waiting for the test results. peacefully looking up at the dim-lit ceiling. Someday like this, perhaps I will be hauled in and die. I prayed. Lord God, if hauled in I die, let me die as peaceful as I am now. Why so peaceful? Well, there are these kind of days and those kind of days. The baptism I administered earlier was enjoyable and gracious. In general, I enjoy a sense of creativity and thankfulness. But then there are those days when everything goes wrong. Lord God, dying is difficult enough. Don't let me die on a bad hair day. That actually all came to me while I was in that waiting room. Well, I'd be disappointed if that's the thing that's most remembered for my whole life. No. Under my bed, old enough to know some identity between Jesus and God, learned enough to know letters of the alphabet, I would slide under my bed. The bed was up against a wall in a corner of the attic. Snug in the dim light, I was away on my own, alone in the silence. I prayed without knowing I was praying. In the emptiness, I knew the presence. I would scratch on the wood on the underside of the bed, God, Jesus. I want to watch. I want to watch Venus slowly fade in the sunrise. I want to watch the elderly woman turn over shells on the beach. I want to watch leaves fall quietly on a windless October afternoon. I want to watch children playing on a green lawn, arms and legs flying. I want to watch the daffodils bloom in late March. I want to watch with everybody else also watching. Green leaves. If ever I wished to be a painter, I wish I were one now. In this mid-May, the trees are a lush green, a variety of greens. The spring juices have been seeping up the trunks, out into the branches, to the twigs at the edge, morphing into leaves. How do you paint the vast array of spring green? The greens are backlit, are shadowed by branches and other trees, are darker in the distance, yet all blended hues in a textured carpet. Green moving from green to green, sharp divisions blurred and mixed. Does this describe me? A beautiful tapestry of hues bleeding into one another, one colorful layer of me mixing into another? And does it describe me and you together? My hue melting into the hue of you. Where do I end and you begin? You end, I begin. The trees are lush and are so green, green, green. I am not the one to grasp it, not the one to paint it. For joy hardwired. Created in the image of God, who in creating bubbles over with joy, I can only be similarly joyful in creative kindness for people. Torcello. On the island of Torcello near Venice, a mosaic of death, judgment, and resurrection adorns the whole wall behind the altar. After meditating upon this epic story for a long time, I started to walk toward the boat station for the return trip to Venice. The sun was strong and the air still, so still that the whole setting seemed as motionless as a picture. In the quiet, at one point along the quay, the stillness transformed into eternity. The calm, mirror-like surface of the green water, reflecting in absolute detail the forms of small boats, the cloudless sky, deep and serene, erect and unwavering trees, no sound, no motion, no people. The very far and expansive beyond broke through, overcoming life's hustle and bustle for a second, a few moments. In what seemed eternity solidified, I waited for the boat. Deeper than doing. Please don't tell me to do what I must do. In doing just what I must, I get angry. Just love me, and I know what I must do. In your love, I do not do just what I must do, but what I do in gracious thanksgiving. Gratitude. Sick for several years, Henrietta, my father's mother, died of throat cancer in 1932 at 52 years of age. My father was 29. He hired my mother, a recent graduate of Catherine Labouré Nursing School in South Boston, to care for Henrietta in the last year of her life. My mother was 21. My father extended my mother's stay to care for his father, Thomas, who also died of throat cancer. My father and mother married in 1935. They would not have met if my grandparents did not suffer and die of cancer. I pray in gratitude that my parents met and married. Does that mean I pray in gratitude that my grandparents suffered cancer? Thank you, Lord, for my parents. Thank you for who I am in your love, emerging out of all the joys and pains of my parents. I appreciate, Lord, all the pain and joy of all my ancestors. These pains, sorrows, failures, sins, joys, successes, achievements have come to me and who I am. I thank you, Lord, for all these people. This is how you have created me. This is how you love me. Salvation Express. In a dream, a friend and I worked on a project. It's not clear what that is, but that's unimportant. The solution to a particular problem we met was to make out of ourselves a train that would fly. And that we did. We flew as freely floating bodies, one following the other. If this was the solution to our problem, then perhaps, we thought, this could be the solution for all those others who missed their trains, whose trains were late, or even whose trains never came. We picked up all these stray people and flew in and amongst the stars, unhindered by destinations, free from the divisions amongst people segregated into first and second classes. Our bodies, now in countless numbers, made up the train, floating freely one after the other on the cosmic salvation express. I'm watching my time. I think I've just about got it right. So I have a few more here, if you'll allow me. Who do I look like? Who do I look like, you ask? Do I look like my child? We more commonly say my child looks like me. If aliens landed, would they say we, who think we all look different, all look alike? Under the influence of advertising, many people want to look like the beautiful people imaged. But then there is love. We image the person we love. In creating us, we image God. But that says there is some image of us in God. God in Jesus further looks like us in becoming human like us. Imaged and loved by God, when I love, I look like God. Playful prayer. Once with God, I played a game of pretend. I suggested we switch roles. I pretend I was God. God pretend God was me. We swirled around playing with that for a while. Then the pretending became real. It does not make any difference if God is God, if God is me, if I am me, I am God. God as God has loved me enough to create me. If I were God, I would love God enough to create God. Is there enough time for two more pieces? Okay. This is a little essay, a short story. Funny in some ways, but in a tragic sense also. This is called The 15-Minute Hijack. The relationship between Israel and Palestine has been bitter, unstable, violent for many decades. In difficult times, the main checkpoint from Jerusalem into the West Bank, the occupied territories, at Bethlehem is shut down. While I was Superior Director of the Pontifical Biblical Institute in Jerusalem, I enjoyed a close relationship with Bethlehem University and often visited the Christian brothers who founded and staffed the school. Sometime in the year 2000, in an evening, already dark, I could not enter Bethlehem through the main checkpoint. There was a curfew on all of the West Bank. But I knew a back way to sneak in. I drove to that entry point and entered unchecked. I drove slowly, with lights out, through deserted, darkened streets, with shuttered dark houses on each side. At a little distance before me, I noticed a small group of people standing in the middle of the road, signaling me to stop. I did not know if they were Israeli soldiers or Palestinians. I approached slowly and stopped. They were 5 Palestinian teenagers, about 13, with guns. Several were machine guns. They rushed my car. They learned I was an American in a car with a Jordanian number plate. Curious, they swarmed around my car, banging on it, waving their guns. This could all go very bad. I tried a little Arabic, saying, "Imshi," go away, like talking to small children. This had a good effect. They laughed and swarmed at my window. I heard in broken English, "Where are you going?" I told them I was going to Bethlehem University. This changed the mood immediately. The 5 of them squeezed into my car to escort me to the university. I had no say in the matter. The gun-waving kids were in charge. I was being hijacked. Arriving at the university, we were like a jubilant little parade. At the gates of the university, an Arab guard approached the car and very quickly, assessing the situation, immediately and sternly took charge. He told the young teenagers to get out of the car, take their guns and themselves, and go home. Having now a little fun, I thanked the kids for escorting me and protecting me. What saved this situation from very easily going seriously wrong was the reputation of the Christian brothers. In the very prolonged, bloody Arab-Israeli conflict, the brothers provided a steady service of education. These brothers did not have to be there. They were admired and loved. The Palestinians protected them. These teenagers knew and felt this, and their sense of appreciation flowed over to me, wanting to protect me. I only wish they did not have guns. Okay, before we get to some questioning, this one last piece. I may read another one during the questioning, but at any rate. This is called Singing Beautifully. An ancient legend tells us there was a bird which sang a beautiful song, and then at the moment of death sang it even more beautifully. I can easily see my long life in terms of segments: childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, middle-aged, elderly, and then phases within these phases. When I reached 65, the beginning of elderly, looking ahead, I divided this phase into 3 segments: young elderly, from 65 to 75, middle elderly, 75 to 85, and now I'm at the beginning of old elderly, 85 to the end. I identify songs that could describe the spirit of the different segments. In adolescence, some rather sad songs would do, but overall, I have to say I have sung beautifully. Now I am in the last phase of my life. I do not want to say the phase of death because I do not feel near death, but I am nonetheless in the last phase, which ends in death. I feel acutely aware that in this last phase, I am singing more beautifully than ever before. Thank you.